Hi there, listeners, and welcome to the Curious Collective podcast, conversations designed for the veteran and first responder community to bring awareness to those holistic practices that help us live our best life. So tap into the wisdom and knowledge of our guests to heal, transform, and live as your true soulful self. Now, listeners, with me today, we have the amazing Matt Bruce, who is an ex-veteran who's come to talk to us about all things plant medicine, I guess, and whatever else comes out. So welcome, Matt. How are you going?
Yeah, thanks for having me. All the listeners out there, appreciate you tuning in and getting curious about yourself and wanting to understand yourself more, and probably how you can improve yourself and move past some of your pain or understand your partner better. And yeah, let's get into it. And probably let's talk about the intersection between somatics and psychedelics.
Yeah, nice. That sounds
Yeah.
awesome. And, it's something that I am super interested in as well at the moment. So perfect timing, and something I always try to talk to people in our community about. So, um, what is it that you're doing in the world right now? Share with us a bit about that.
Okay, so I have a somatic microdosing school where I teach facilitators how to become facilitators. Um, and then I teach them somatic practices that are based off archetypal work. So
Hmm.
everyone's different. Everyone has their own pathway to understanding themselves. But conveniently, the world has kind of put us into all these archetypes. And if you understand the archetypes, like Carl Jung and some ancient forms of psychology have based their work off this as well. That if you look at archetypes of humans, you can prescribe them certain somatic practices and possibly psychedelics with that to then help them balance out to be, to have a deeper sense of equilibrium, I guess. So
Mm.
yeah, the work that I'm doing is teaching the students more about themselves and taking them deeper into their own healing journeys, like all good facilitator trainings are. And quite a big initiation into strengthening their mind-body connection, and understanding all of their parts archetypally as well too. So, yes, we conveniently get put into these parts of archetypal work, but ultimately we are normally expressing all of these archetypes anyway. It's just that we're moving into them in different ways, different seasons of our life, etc. as well.
Mm. So I love this sort of work, and I understand all of what you just said, but for those listeners that perhaps this is completely new to, I'd love to just unpack it a little bit. So when you say the word somatics, can you describe what that actually means?
Yeah, so somatic means the body.
Mm.
And then ultimately, somatic modalities would be the opposite of traditional talk therapy. So, talk therapy would be top down. So, you're accessing the mind and the memories, etc., and talking about them, where
Mm.
somatic practices are bottom up. So,
Oh my
breath
goodness.
work would be considered a bottom up modality.
Mm.
And it's more about kind of like impacting the body and regulating the body to heal ourselves. So, yeah, I guess as veterans, as emergency services, there's kind of like one set of rule for healing for normal civilians, and then there's people that have been through complex PTSD, military service, emergency services, etc. The wear and tear on their body is so great that they've actually probably changed the way that their DNA expresses itself within their body as forms of protection mechanism to actually safeguard themselves from the environment. That even when you go and feel and heal and do the normal journaling that everyone else does, there's actually another set of like work that you need to do. You need to go back and basically repattern your DNA through particular plants, etc., to really allow you to come back to vitality and equilibrium as well. So it's like, I guess an easy way to explain that is that there's extra load put on your organs and your nervous system that you're going to have to go an extra step deeper into like really healing to get that extra level of equilibrium.
Mm. I love how you just explained that. So thank you very much. That's excellent. And with regards to the archetype work, I love Carl Jung stuff and a bit of Dolores Cannon and that, but those people that archetype is like a completely new word for them. What's an example you could use to explain archetypes from your perspective?
Um, okay, I guess a really, really simple one. If you looked at the world and you looked at dark and light, and you put everyone in the light archetype as kind of like the people that are doing good, and then everyone in the bottom part is doing bad.
Mm.
They're kind of archetypes in the sense of, we're just, it's all one big thing, but we're just putting a lens over it and looking at one particular property. So, there's other archetypes in an extension of Carl Jung's work, which I really love. I think it was like Caroline Mees. She did a extension of archetypal work for the inner child. So you can have like the victim child, the prostitute child,
Wounded child.
oh yeah, the wounded child, etc., and all these different archetypal
Mm.
expressions of still a child, but you've got the different parts of the child, etc. So, prostitute child isn't necessarily an expression of what we think it means. It's like, you're going to do something for money, etc., which most people in the modern world are doing that for a job. They're
Mm.
doing something that they don't want to be doing. They're receiving money in exchange for something that doesn't feel good for them, and they're doing it. So, there's multiple schools of thought out there in
Mm.
archetypal, I guess trains of thought. And then our school looks at a light feminine, a light masculine, a dark feminine, and a dark masculine, which,
Mm.
my train of thought is that they conveniently line up with the four different common trauma profiles around fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, etc. So it
Mm.
allows a person in my school to really understand, okay, what does flight look like as a trauma response, and what are the possible archetypal behaviors that a person has when they are actually in the flight response?
Mm.
What do their behaviors look like? And then if you have like a freeze response, what kind of person normally coincides with a freeze response? So,
Mm.
when you become quite skilled in these areas, you can start to look at people, look at their bodies, look at their somatic representation of who they are, what their elemental makeup is, and then kind of archetype them, and then have an understanding of what their trauma is as well.
Mm. Oh, I love the way you speak. So for that, what I heard there is like sometimes when you want to question it more or you want to go deeper. I know myself as a veteran, it's like I lived in this like I didn't question things, I just did. So this for me would be great because it gives me like an exploratory framework that I can then understand myself better or look at different perspectives or angles and have some questions to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the number one thing around archetypal work is it allows us to remove the ego, and we can look at the good and the bad. So if you pull a card like the old angel cards, etc., it can kind of be a little bit archetypal in the sense of it allows you to kind of detach. And often when you're getting real-time feedback from a person, our defense mechanisms can be up, and it can limit our capacity to be able to hear the information and take it on board. And archetypal work allows us to look at this particular archetype with a step of distance in between us. We can look at the light and we can look at the shadow aspects and be like, well, even the light can be shadow as well. If we're excessively in one particular area of our lightness, that's pretty shadow as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like witnessing where we need to have the balance. And it's that removalness of us that allows us to reflect and witness. And in those aha moments, we become more aware, and then we
Mm.
can become curious if we choose to.
It's like introspection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I love it. And so you combine the somatics, the archetypal work, and what was the other
And
thing that you
psychedelics.
mentioned?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what got you into the space of working with psychedelics personally?
Um, I think that, I've studied facilitator trainings all over the world. I've basically I'm a holotropic rebirth practitioner since like I did holotropic breathwork practitioner training in 2018. I then am a rebirthing breathwork facilitator as well. I've studied yin yoga, so I'm a yin yoga teacher. I'm a Kundalini yoga teacher. I've studied in intimacy schools and sexuality schools. So naturally, progressively, the next thing was psychedelics. So
Mm.
ultimately, I feel like sexuality and Kundalini are pretty psychedelic in themselves.
Yeah.
They have such a strong life force capability that can induce psychedelic like effects as well. So
Mm.
me having the embodiment and the understanding of teaching those, and being able to integrate those parts within inside myself was like the next step was psychedelic. So I went and
Mm.
studied in a somatic integration psychedelic facilitator school as well. And then I traveled all around the world, and I hadn't done large amounts of psychedelics. I'd done ayahuasca once before I went traveling. And then I ended up in the Amazon, and I did ayahuasca. And she showed me vision. She was like pretty happy with me. At the time, I had like a plant-based iron business, a plant-based iron tonic for women, where, I invested a lot of my money and time and effort in supporting women who had low blood chi and low iron, and, women who didn't have their period and women who had like lost their period after miscarriages, etc. This business is thriving in supporting women in a really challenging state. So I think the work that I'd done on myself, plus how I was supporting my community as a male, that ayahuasca was like pretty happy with me, and she was like, gave me like a vision. She said, "Go to America and do this," and it's pretty clear, and it was a pretty cool experience. So, this was my next step. This is kind of what she showed me, and it's like, without me actually really needing to do anything, it's just all been unfolding in front of me. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
That's pretty beautiful. And then you now allowing others to hop on that path and follow their breadcrumbs and see what unfolds for the
Yeah.
work that they need to be on this earth doing.
Yeah, and I think I've secured a rental property in a place called Topanga in the United States. And when I reached out to the guy who owns the property through a friend, he was like, "Tell me why you want to live here." I explained to him who I was. I'm a veteran. I'm a somatic expert. I want to come and support the veteran communities in the United States. And he was like, "Holy shit! I just did a fundraiser for veterans and psychedelics. Come live here, bro."
Oh,
So
awesome.
a lot of divinely supported
Yeah.
things that are happening in my life to really empower me to do this. And I think, what I'm really doing at the moment, when you ask like who am I and what do I do, um, I'm really actually just entering into the veteran psychedelic landscape, because I feel like veterans are going to be the people that are really going to get the most out of this psychedelic revolution. And I'd love to be able to support veterans and create communities and, push my value system in a healthy way to veterans who don't know about psychedelics, and not to see like a generation of veterans just become enslaved to psychedelics, and not actually truly free themselves. And for them to understand that, liberation and equilibrium comes from a place of doing the work and psychedelics. Yeah.
That integration piece that isn't spoken about that much, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
It is
Beautiful.
more and more these days. So
Yeah.
yeah, and
And we
look,
shall keep speaking about it.
yeah, and in all honesty, like I've seen out of 99.9% of people that I've ever spoken to that have done microdosing, have never ever done it on a plan with a coach, with a facilitator.
Yeah.
They're taking psychedelics just by themselves, they're out in the real world, driving to work, and no one's there educating them or helping them. So it could be considered a bit rash of me to create a psychedelic school, but I think that with the knowledge I have around neuroplasticity and human change and behavioral change and trauma in the nervous system, and my huge interest in plants and all these things, I'm creating like a safe space for people to have some form of education that doesn't exist out there as well.
Yeah, I love that a lot. And I guess as well that that education piece has been missing. I know I've had people reach out to me that have been interested in it, but not for the way that you describe it so beautifully, for that equilibrium and that balance, but more for, I haven't tried that. Is it a good, hit? And it's like, well, that's not what it's for. That's not how I see it or have worked with it. Like, let's talk a bit more. But to have people that are doing that as a framework would just be magical.
Yeah, I think, really when we look at neuroplasticity and neurotransmitters and addiction and you know, loss of mood and all of these things, a lot of it comes down to that at some point in time we had some form of human experience that we shut off from.
Mm,
And that can shut off from feeling within our body. We can have emotional contractions, we can have physical contractions, we can have things in our peripheral nervous system, we can have things stored in our fascia and our tissue,
mm,
and we can turn off particular receptors and neurotransmitter sites within our mind. And it's quite complex, the healing of a human being, that you can have trauma in all these spots. It's like pretty wild.
mm,
And if you're shut off parts of your body like this, whether it be through, your mind, your physical body, your nervous system, you're going to become probably slightly unregulated. You're going to have amounts of energy that want to move through your body or going to want to move in certain ways, and they can't move. So that can come out in a multitude of ways of how your body might be seeking certain substance to regulate itself, or might be looking to down-regulate or up-regulate. And then this is where psychedelics are quite magical and plants are quite magical, because I guess the balanced nature of plants, the healing nature of these plants, that they can actually help us turn on these parts of our body again. They can help us basically turn on and off receptor sites within our mind, but they can also like repattern our DNA. And I think that that's been my most lived experience. Before I started a psychedelic facilitator training, that I'd been on like a 2 or 3 year journey of healing myself with medicinal mushrooms. And medicinal mushrooms are so powerful at healing our DNA and the way that our DNA is expressed, that you can actually go in and heal all of your organs. And this is kind of what I was talking about. Like, there's a different depth of healing for service members and non-service members. And that, when you're been in such a long form of shutdown or contraction in the military, with probably a highly likely chance of having a low social demographic or a low emotional intelligence household before the military as well, your organs are going to be struggling. Your heart's going to more than likely be shut down, and that mushrooms are a really amazing tool to be able to go in and heal those parts of yourself, and change the way that your DNA is expressing itself, and bring these organs back online, that they can be supportive of your human experience.
Oh, I love the way that you just spoke into that, and definitely rewind and re-listen to that, listeners. But the part there that I love that you mentioned as well as part of the body is the fascia. Like, I think that that isn't spoken about enough, is that what we store in the fascia as well. And I like that you educated me just now on those receptors that we can switch back on, and the changing of the DNA. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty wild as to what we can do and what we can heal. And I just want to share into some certain stories in my healing journey for veterans out there. It's like, I'd done 160 holotropic breathwork journeys. I was meditating, I was going to see a naturopath. I was using, white light discipline. So I was like getting all the rest that I needed, meditating large amounts, eating the herbs and everything that I was meant to be. As far as like healing for PTSD, I would have been a poster child for, or like a role model for what it took to heal yourself. But I think that parts of my real capacity to be able to have balance and relate with myself didn't come until, I looked at my organs and looked at like particular mushrooms that I could take to repattern those organs. And that those organs play such a large piece of our emotional equilibrium and our emotional harmony, and then therefore so within, so without. So my relationship with my small intestine, and the small intestine's relationship with your heart, that in traditional Chinese medicine, the small intestine is all about determining whether something's good or bad for you. And when you're in a relationship, when somebody might be challenging for you, and let's say that that's normally the reverse in this one, where the veterans are the challenging one in the relationship and the other person's putting up with us. But ultimately, if we can't perceive whether a person is good or bad for us, and we can't perceive food is good or bad for us, and we're watching the news or watching information we're not sure if that's good or bad for us as well, we're kind of in this very challenging space where our small intestine, which is there to process food and information and experiences, and our capacity to basically, do we want this or do we not want it?
Yeah.
It plays such a important functional role for the heart, that if you can't get that right, well, then your capacity for your heart to be right, your capacity for your relationships to be right, is going to struggle. So there's particular medicinal mushrooms out there that I've taken that have really allowed me to reintegrate that part of my experience and heal that on a DNA level, to then basically go back and be like, okay, cool. Like, now I can go out into the world and make decisions and make healthy decisions, because that particular part of my organ system is fixed. And then that goes for multiple organs. There's like, I think in a traditional Chinese medicine system, there's something like 11
Mm.
organs all up. So there's like five yang organs. They all have a paired yin organ, and then there's like some made up ones as well that aren't even
Yeah.
that they as well. So, you know, I've been through personally in my healing journeys to go and understand every single one of those organs and how it works in the body, on top of the nervous system, on top of the fascia, on top of the peripheral nervous system, on top of just the standard healing your gut and all these things.
Mm.
That's the work, that's the potential. And when we can do that, we can then get back to a state of being really balanced and have really loving relationships and, you know, really deep connection to community and, you know, be in our power as humans.
Oh, you are speaking my language. Like, that is pure gold to me. Yes. And I hear the word intuition is inner tuition. Why would you not want to study and learn about the intricacies of this amazing vessel? And all those multi-layered things like the organs, the nervous system, all the things you just spoke about. There's so much wisdom within us that we can explore. We don't really need to seek externally. We just need to come in and do this. So, and it's not like a having to do it. It's you want to do it. You choose you want to take that path and get deeper with it. So you just
Yeah.
put that so spoke that so well.
It never ends as well too. So I've just been like traveling a lot recently in the last 3 weeks where I was probably in had to move 5 or 6 times. And now that kind of really ungrounds me and I feel a bit unsettled in myself.
Mm.
So now I'm in Queensland and I'm doing the 3 nights, or I did 3 nights. I'm probably going to do it again tonight. 3 nights of no white light after the sun goes down. So as soon as the sun goes down, no phone, no computer, no light inside the house, just candles. And me and my partner are kind of like playing Monopoly deal, like holding our cards up to the candles to see what color they are,
Yes.
or reading books like at night. But
Mm.
ultimately, you're still going to have to do those things. You're still going to have to take care of yourself. You're still going to have to realize that you're a sensitive human in an industrial revolution, that if you want to be on top of your game, that you still got to it's not just like healing, it's more of a lifestyle.
And the word that I'm getting is like having that awareness to know, all right, well, I am feeling ungrounded now. What can I do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
I think that that's where, the psilocybin is really amazing as well too. Um, often we don't have the awareness is because we're outside our window of tolerance or very up against it.
Mm.
And you think about a sympathetic nervous system or a person who's kind of very like raised in their sympathetic nervous system, they're more than likely in that for a reason because they don't want to be in a space of balance or equilibrium because they're going to have to go down and feel something that they don't want
Yeah.
to feel.
Yeah.
So they're keeping themselves up against their window of tolerance. And I
Mm.
think that this has a lot to do with porn use and males ejaculating and all these things, but they're keeping themselves like tapped out. So they're
Mm.
out of their window of tolerance so they don't have to go back and feel and heal. And psilocybin is a pretty special plant where it actually supports people for their window of tolerance. So it can actually be like, oh, I feel good. My mood feels
Mm.
good. I'm actually letting go of the past. I'm feeling more in my body. And in that, your window of tolerance increases. So you have the
Mm.
capacity to feel and connect more.
Yeah, I love that. And it's something you just spoke into there with regards to that sort of addiction in that sort of porn space. I'd love to do a whole nother episode on that because I feel like there's so much to speak to in that space on a broader spectrum as well.
Yeah.
If you'd like to offer that to the
Yeah,
listeners.
totally. Yeah, I'm up for that. I think that
Yeah.
that's huge. Like, my personal experience was Afghanistan for 6 months where we all use porn,
Mm.
and we're actually switching off from the fear of death. So, 270 rocket attacks in a 6 month period, then you don't want to feel fear. You don't want to express your fear because you have shame. So then you shame your fear response, you shame your fight or flight response. And then you've got all this energy that you don't want to feel because the fear of death is still going off inside of you as a
Mm.
soldier. You've locked it away under shame because you've got to be a tough guy. And then you're using porn to disassociate from that or disconnect from that. And then you go home and you realize, well, you can't be intimate with your missus or have a close relationship with her as well. So, yeah,
Mm.
that's a
There's
whole,
so much in that. There's
yeah.
so much in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for that insight. But so you were in the military. What was that sort of phase between leaving the military or just deciding that you wanted to leave the military to when you found this work and this path that you're on now?
Yeah. Good question. So yeah, I think my time in the military, I did 10 years. I was pretty burnt out at the end of it. I think maybe the old performance punishment thing and being like a chook. So I was a telecommunications technician. And ever since I got to my unit, I'd probably been away 10 months of the year. And that was for my whole career. And even the first 3 years, you're in a training command center for 3 years. So I don't know which one's worse. Like being in training command for 3 years is like intense. That's just stressed nervous system straight away that never turns off. But then you've got your trips to Afghanistan, and then being asked. I was requested of the SAS to post across there, so I had a cushy posting back to Melbourne, which would have yeah, and so I was asked to go to the SAS. I was going to talk about the house pricing and how much money I lost in the Perth housing market, but so yeah, I was requested to go to Perth, and I was a support staff member there, and then I went on a deployment to Jordan, where it was like an intelligence deployment. Basically, watch people get their heads cut off online for 6 months straight, and I was in so much burnout already after Afghan and all this other time away. I'd been in a relationship for 8 years and I'd been home for, probably eight, 16 months of that, like
Oh
16 months
wow.
out of 8 years, I was
Mm,
home. So,
that's significant.
yeah, it was huge. And, as soon as I wasn't like away, I was on a promotion course in another side of Australia. It was intense.
Mm,
And, I remember having the courage to speak up to my sergeant in the SAS, being like, he's like, oh, you got to come back to Brisbane for another course. And we were in Brisbane while we're having this. So I'd just come back from deployment for 6 months. And I said, Sarge, I've been home for like 1 month out of 18 months, and he's like, just listen to me. And then he's like, so you're coming back to Brisbane? It was just like intense. So
mm,
I was really burnt out. And then I did 126 nautical miles off the coast of Australia to Exmouth on a rib, which is like a high powered jet boat in the military. And I was using exercise 2, 3 times a day to like regulate my emotional state.
mm,
Um, and then that boat ride just cooked my back. Like I had spasms in my back. I couldn't move like for weeks or months after that.
mm.
And my partner of 8 years said that she wanted to leave me. So basically, I had this huge like emotional turning point.
Culmination.
Yeah, I'd just come back from a deployment where, I'd been watching people get their heads cut off. I didn't even know what they'd done to me. My partner said she wanted to leave me and I hurt my back. So
Mm,
I started drinking like a liter of scotch a night. And I
poor
remember,
body.
I remember being on like that boat exercise up to Exmouth with the squadron. And the shooters were coming up to me and saying to me that I was like blackout drunk last night, and I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember most nights. I was getting that drunk,
Mm,
which then saw me end up in Adelaide with a civvy mate. Um, and I was like on course, and I would like walk outside, throw up in the toilets, and then come back in and then pass the exam. And had been out drinking till like 3 a.m. in Brisbane. Like I was
complete survival mode.
yeah, it's off the rails. Like, and
Mm,
what troubles me is that I wasn't like that. So where's the
mm,
old buddy system in the military there, and where was my sergeant or my officers, etc.,
yeah.
supporting that? And so then I ended up in Adelaide on a big bender with my civvy mates, and I said to my mate, look, I think we should go to the pub early because we're going to watch the football. Then we should go to the pub early, and then that way we can get an early night. And I was actually genuine in that, but it was like 3 a.m. and I was, in a strip club, like getting blind as. So then I was involved in a bit of an incident, which got reported to, the SAS, and then I also had a top secret security clearance at the time as well. So I got like a show cause, and I think the military was supportive in my show cause to keep me around,
Yeah.
because they'd seen kind of what had happened to me, and they realized, well, we probably let this guy slip through the
Yeah, we
cracks.
should have looked after him a bit better.
Yeah. And then by that time it was too late. We got too good of money on Civvy Street, and I could have gone through the whole schema thing and waiting for schema to,
Wasn't
tell
meant
me
to
I was
be.
in the system that had damaged my mental emotional health, and there probably wasn't much that they were going to do for me. And the good news is that, I was able to fix my own back. So it had a lot to do with my psoas. So I'm not sure if
Mm-hmm.
you're aware what your psoas is as a breathwork practitioner, that
Mm.
your psoas has a large part of storing kind of trauma and emotions within it. So in me releasing my own psoas back then, I was able to fix my back and, come back to some kind of emotional stability and being able to do exercise again.
Mm.
And then I later went back and had my separation from the military changed into like medical discharge for
Mm.
PTSD. Yeah. I then went on for the next 3 years, kind of like drinking and creating unnecessary stress that didn't exist in my life, and just being a standard military person who hadn't really, um, healed or taken the time to. I guess I was just like I was kind of like one of those dolls that you like wind up and let go, and I was just
Yeah.
like
Grrr.
trajectory. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
was just like marching
Headed
along.
towards the end where you've
Just because I
off.
got out of the army, like that didn't stop me. I'd stay up
Yeah.
till 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning on my laptop,
Mm.
finding things. And even in the corporate environment, I was like, it's kind of like the old saying of, you walk into a garden, you think you see the snake and the snake's not there, but you're just looking for a snake to, because you're emotionally addicted to stress. And that's kind of where I
Yeah.
was at after the military. Yeah.
Yeah, what an interesting way to look at it, and what a great analogy, because I see it every day with people that are coming
Yeah.
by. Like, just I call it like the high functioning veteran that gets out and then they just crack on, just keep doing the things thinking they're like winning, but it's just so much because they haven't stopped ever.
Yeah.
That when
Yeah.
they do, it's like
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And it's also like that's why we used to all sit around as diggers in the bays, pissing and moaning about the headquarters, because we were emotionally addicted to like cortisol.
Mm,
We were stressed as soldiers, and we would sit around and whinge about the headquarters because it gave us our fix.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
So what was your I call it gateway drug, but what was your thing that sort of snapped you out of that cyclic pattern of survival?
I think my nervous system just fully imploded.
Yeah.
Um, but there was parts of meditation,
Mhm.
and yeah, I think it was meditation and just like so much stress that my whole nervous system just like cracked. And I basically had like an Eckhart Tolle moment. Like it was kind of full, it was full silence in my mind.
Mm,
Um, and I'd say like around the same time and previously, I was doing drug, sex, and rock and roll. So basically anything I could get my hands on, I was at that point of like redness in my mental, emotional health. But like, yeah, I just kind of had like a big bang where all of a sudden everything just went really silent, and I didn't have any thoughts in my head. And like a work colleague would come up to me and I would be concerned about their emotions and how they were feeling. And then I
mm,
went downstairs and bought some fruit salad, and I was eating the fruit salad in the cafeteria, and I could taste the fruit. It tasted like I was
mm,
rainbow. It's like I was off my head on some kind of psychedelic experience. And then I like that was it. I was like stuck there. And then I had this whole other um perspective of who I was, and this whole other perspective of how the world worked.
mm,
And I had a new form of language, and I had a different way of seeing myself in the world. And then I went to a corporate meditation, I think the next day, and I sat down, and it's kind of hard to recall, but I think I had been meditating a little bit around those times as well. And I sat down in the corporate meditation and I closed my eyes, and then I just kind of opened them and was like, well, why do I come into this room to sit down to meditate?
mm.
Can't I just like meditate in every second of every day? Like, why can't I just like
Yes.
look at my thoughts and master my mind?
Mm,
And then that's what I did. Like ever since that moment, I still meditate and close my eyes because I think that that
yeah.
serves a specific purpose. But then,
And
yeah,
so much goodness in the rest too.
yeah, and ever since in that moment, like, yeah, I've just had more awareness of to
Mm,
what my mind was telling me, stories that it wanted to create, the drama that I was in, the stories that I was creating for myself, and my lack of power and free will and choice and all these things. And yeah.
Wow, I love that. That in what you just shared there is so huge, and I guess people that are wanting change or feeling like that curiosity or the doors open and they're peeping in is like, just keep doing the things, just keep waiting for that, for your moment, for that to
Yeah.
drop in. You just spoke into it so well, and I've had that experience of that food tasting different, or reading something and not just seeing the words on the page, but feeling so much more as you're reading it, the depth
Mhm.
that you don't feel before that, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the great remembering, like you spoke into this rediscovering or finding out who you actually were. It's like the great remembering of who you were before you were doing all those other things.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a lot. I then basically quit my job and moved to Bali.
Oh,
Sold my
nice.
house, yeah, and went and lived in Ubud for 2 years. And yeah,
I love it over there. But so if the listeners that have heard all the wisdom you've dropped so far are interested in this work that you're doing and your somatic school and the psychedelics and things like that, but they're a bit on the fence, maybe a bit skeptical, things like that, what advice would you have for people to sort of get them across the line or create a bit more curiosity or plant some seeds for them?
I would say don't come until you are sure, because the work of being a facilitator and becoming acquainted with psychedelics and all those things is something that you really need to step into powerfully. So if you're on the fence with anything you do in your life, like maybe that school's not for you, and wait till you're a powerful human and you want to come back. um, Another thing that we could do, like, if you think you are a powerful human and you're ready to step in, but it's more of like a logical, or you're not full tuned in your clarity, a process we could do is like, gently close your eyes for a moment, and with your eyes closed, just envision a circle like in front of you on the ground, and you're looking down at that circle. And in that circle has the somatic psychedelic facilitator training course. And at the end of that training course, you'd be able to confidently introduce or take somebody through a microdosing protocol with their safety, your safety, and be able to support them in getting more growth and more outcome. And you're looking at that circle. And then I want you to just like notice how you feel in your body, and notice how you're feeling in your mind, in your body while looking at a circle. And then if you want to join the school, you just step in. So take a moment to step into the circle, and then just notice how it feels in your body, and notice what emotion it brings up for you. Does it feel peaceful, calm, happy, joyful? Does it feel big? Does it feel edgy? And just witness that, and take that into your decision making process. So you can open up your eyes now, but bringing the felt sense of stepping into work or stepping into an experience of how that makes you feel in your body, is a very important part of decision making. But it's also a really important part of knowing if something's right for you. And any facilitator training should be really, yeah, I guess you should decide that with a level of reflection. You should sit with it, and like, it's a
Mm.
big decision. It's a big initiation. To be a facilitator and to want to support other humans is an initiation in itself. And yeah, not something that should be taken lightheartedly.
Beautiful wisdom there. And I love that you spoke into asking your body and feeling whether that's a yes or a no. I always ask my body these days, and the more you do it, I feel like the quicker it is. It's always just a yes, no. Even social media now, I'm like, "Ooh," scrolling till I get a yes in the body. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I'll read that.
Nice. That's
Yeah. So thank you so much. You have just dropped so much wisdom. You're speaking my language, and I hope that the listeners have received what they needed to from our conversation. And I would love to welcome you back onto the podcast at some stage.
Yeah, cool. What do you want to chat about?
I think the sacral and somatics around um, Kundalini and you know, the sexual energy and also that the addiction that you can get there in that space, male and female.
Yeah, cool. All right. Yeah, I'd love to. I think that that's a really important part of, being out in our power as individuals is, understanding our capacity for life force. We can generate humans on this planet, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But also, we can generate other things with that same energy as well. So integrating that in ourselves allows us to be like really in our power and is an important topic. So you just send me the invite link and
Yeah,
I'll be there.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, listeners. And we will be here again next week. Katie out.